Hello, we're going to have a look at two 15 markers for education. They both of them have not come up before, but they are on the list of 15 markers that you can be asked. So vocational education is really narrow and social selection is really, really broad. So outline, explain the meaning of vocational education. As always, in a 15 marker, I'm going to aim for 3 paragraphs. If possible, with 3 sociologists per paragraph. So vocational education is education or a curriculum that prepares young people for work. So I give a little definition just because it, I think, helps me understand. So vocational education. In paragraph 1, I'm going to look at studio schools. So studio schools provides skill-based learning. And it's where students work with local employers. And they gain practical skills. So it's provide skill-based learning. Students work with local employers and gain practical skills that's needed in work. It was designed to, I'm going to say it's a contemporary social policy designed to address a skills shortage. So, Dan Finn and Phil Cohen note that the only skills developed in vocational education are only relevant for low-skilled jobs with poor prospects of advancement. These schools are over-concentrated with students from working class backgrounds, and there are also ethnic minorities. So we've got our studio schools, Finn and Cohen, to suggest, again, a discussion around vocational education. And given that they're Marxists and in the Marxist grid, I just think to myself, is there anybody else from that Marxism grid that I could use to elevate that paragraph? So I'm going to add in Bowles and Gintis. Just that education is about transmitting good worker attitudes, as capitalism requires a passive and docile workforce that will accept low-skilled, low-paid jobs. I generally do, when I do low-skilled, I try and do little inverted commas because again, during a kind of the first lockdown, those people whose jobs are considered to be low skilled were the people still out there providing us with food and necessities. So I've got Dan Finn and Phil Cohen, I've got Studio Schools, and a little bit of Bowles and Gintis just to elevate it. I know they don't mention vocational education, but I feel like it just gives a little bit. I remember them and I feel like it gives a bit of range there. So this shows that vocational education is designed to provide cheap labour. It's designed to provide cheap labour and ensure that capitalism exploits the working class and limits. So it ensures that capitalism, it's designed to provide cheap labour and ensures that capitalism can continue to exploit working class labour. So that's paragraph 1. Vocational education, so basically studio schools, are designed to provide cheap labour. If this was a 35, I would note that £23 million was wasted on studio schools. So it's 14 to 19. And remember, I did make that point, if you remember when we taught this, that these aren't apprenticeships. They are working with local employers from the age of 14. So they do 2 days in work a week. Again, if it's not good enough for those MPs' children, the question would be if it's good enough for our children. So, yeah. And also, again, a lot of money wasted. Anyway, that's paragraph 1, all Marxist. Paragraph 2 is going to be that vocational education actually drives up standards and can cater for individual need. This one's completely different. So this one's suggesting vocational education is a good thing, drives up standards and can cater for individual needs. So this one, we're going to do New Right. So Chubb and Mo. Chubb and note that vocational education is a way to ensure that market forces, so private business, because obviously they work with private business, they work with local employers. It's a way to ensure that market forces or private business drive up standards within education. It's a way that market forces or private business can drive up standards within education. And again, it provides skills used in work, which they would argue is a good thing. For Davis and Moore, this would be a way to allocate roles due to the ability of students. I know Davis and Moore are functionalism, but again, I just think, well, actually, they would argue that's a nice way to allocate roles, and they're not that far removed. They tend to have an agreement. And then lastly, for Usher Attell, vocational education is a way to enable individual needs to be met. It provides choice and moves away from a one-size-fits-all approach to education. Bit of a mash-up there. Got some functionalism, New Right, and postmodernism. So this shows that vocational education is a way to ensure that young people are provided with practical skills that will support them in work. It ensures that young people are provided with practical skills that will support them in a work. It's acting as a bridge to ensure society functions. Because I'm kind of veered off into society functions, I suppose you could really put Parsons there in the bridge as a little reference, just as a note. So, vocational education. I didn't produce a third paragraph. I suppose you could remove Parsons and Davis some more if you wanted to, and make it into two smaller paragraphs. Yeah, you could always do that. So functionalism is ensuring it continues to function, and for Chubb and Moe, ultimately, it's about private business. So social selection is really tricky if you don't know what we mean by social selection. So social selection is the different actions of agencies, so individuals, or I think I'm going to put it as teachers. It's different actions of agencies, so teachers, or an environment. And it has an impact on attainment in education. So it's the different actions of agencies, so teachers, individual teachers, or an environment, both having an impact upon the achievement of young people. So, paragraph 1, we can argue that social selection social selection means that environments social selections or conditions. So social selection is the actions of agencies, teachers, or a environment or conditions. So social selections or conditions such as material deprivation have an impact on achievement. So the reason why I've gone to material deprivation is because when I think of an environmental factors or like a classroom, or I think of the conditions that you live in, that makes me think of poverty and really poor quality housing. So social selection is the different actions of agencies or teachers or conditions, the environment, and it has an impact upon attainment. So social selection conditions such as material deprivation have an impact upon achievement. So I'm going to do Smith and Noble. Look at material deprivation or the impacts of poverty, poor diet, poor quality housing, I don't know if you noticed I was doing a big deep breath. Forsyth and Furlong always go with them. That the most significant factor deterring the working class from university is the cost, or was the cost. It certainly will be now with that increase. And catchment area, the areas where schools draw the pupils, those in socially deprived areas with more poverty tend to have a higher turnover of teachers. So, the end of those sociologist and catchment area still knowledge. This shows that social conditions let's go to the question. This shows social selection in the form of conditions can lead to a lack of concentration in lessons due to no breakfast. It can cause higher rates of sickness and therefore helps to explain working class underachievement. It's social selection or the conditions that a child lives in that can lead to them not being able to concentrate in lessons, them missing lessons, and therefore cause or help to explain the working class underachievement rates. Needs a big sigh, doesn't it? Okay, so that's paragraph 1. Conditions, environment leading to those free school meals children underachieving. Paragraph 2. So, social selection can also be the result of individual teachers' actions. So here we're going to do environment, which we've done, and now we're going to do individual teachers. So when I think of teachers, I think of labelling. So I'm going to do Becker. For Becker, you do need to make sure that you know that working class groups are often labelled. They're then placed into bottom set, where they internalise or accept failure, and thus they self-fulfill or give up. A couple of you said to me that teachers have an ideal type, which is most likely to be middle class. That's correct. You can absolutely put that there. But sometimes you're not doing the label, place into bottom set, internalise, so self-fulfill and give up. With Becker, I'm doing just general teachers, and my go-to is I really like Gilbourne and I really remember him. So I'm just going to pop in there Gilbourne from the ethnicity grid, that black males are often seen as a threat by teachers. They are 3 times more likely to be excluded. I'm going to do Gilbourne. Black males are seen as a threat, 3 times more likely to be excluded. And Pilkington. Let's put Pilkington with Gilbourne, and just found that there was evidence of racially discriminatory practices in the allocation of pupils to sets. So got Becker with 2 theories from the ethnicity grid. So otherwise I feel like if I do all of labelling, so do Ray and Hargreaves, it's 2 blue paragraphs, when actually this question's very, very broad. Also, I really remember Gilbourne and Pilkington. So this shows that social selection happens. Social selection happens when students are placed into bottom sets. Learners' grades are restricted. Social selection happens when students are placed into bottom sets and learners' grades are restricted. This means that they internalise and underachieve as a result. This was a 35 I'd evaluate with Mercer or Blackman, but it's not. Okay, individual Environmental. So what I notice is this is a blue paragraph, class. This is 2/3 green and ethnicity. So then I think, I should probably go to pink and do gender. So here I'm going to say that gender inequality in education can be caused by social selection, so individual teachers, and the classroom environment. I feel like I have to almost say the term and do the definition each time. Never come up, so it's very hard, but that does often increase its likelihood. And there'll always be a hard question on each paper. Okay, so I'm going to do Mitos and Brown. The Mitos and Brown, who argues teachers are less strict with boys. They give them more leeway with deadlines and expect lower standards of work. I really like that, so I use it a lot. Mitos and Brown. Teachers less strict with boys, so that's individual agency. Sewell argues that the education system has become feminized. There's been a feminization of education, that the sector is dominated by female teachers, and it means that some boys struggle with the demands of school. So it's basically too many women in the teaching profession. It means that boys are really struggling. It's only about 1 in 5, is it 1? Yeah, 1 in 5 primary school teachers is male. I mean, I'm sure most women feel the same way in most boardrooms or in any senior roles within society. So interesting strategy there. So and then Harris et al. Notes that secondary school females tend to be more hardworking. Could do Kelly, actually. So I really like Kelly's study. Again, it just recalls quite easily. So again, science being packaged as a boys' subject. And we still use gendered narratives or gender narratives. So Jack, James kicking a ball, it sends a message. She also notes that boys are often allowed to dominate. So they shout out over other learners, they grab equipment. So you might occasionally accidentally talk over somebody, because sometimes that happens. But if you continually do it, it's really an assertion of dominance. And if I keep putting my hands up to answer a question from the teacher and you just shout over me constantly when I'm talking, and that's not addressed, that does not create a really good learning environment, and it doesn't generally make people feel confident to engage. So yeah, it's quite problematic if it's not addressed. So this shows that social selection has an impact on gender inequality within education. It shows that social selection is having an impact upon gender inequality in education, causing an environment that means not all will engage, and having lower standards. Causing an issue with gender in education. So a little bit of both, the gender. So it's a really broad one, but it's hidden and really hard if you don't know what social selection is. It is listed as a 15 marker, therefore you do need to know it. But hopefully now that I've gone through it, you'll feel confident and clear on how to approach that one. Again, both of them haven't come up before, so it's really important you can do them, particularly if your exam is looming. Thank you, folks.